Testing, zooming in.
Great to be here at West Point for the reunion of the class of 1959. American heroes, the leaders of our country. Thank you for all you've done and sacrificed for the country. God bless you all.
Getting ready for the class meeting to discuss where the class is, what everybody's thinking, and how the class moves forward. So we're overlooking the beautiful Hudson at the fair.
No fist fights and no injuries. It was a positive thing. I was thinking about this morning and remembering the words of the Herald School song. 40 years on, growing older and older, what will it mean to us 40 years on? We're 60. I think we can make our own judgments about that, but anyway, it's terrific to be here with everybody. We've got, according to Steve, about 250 gathered here. Spouses, children, a couple of winos from the corner we invited in. No, by and large, really a wonderful, wonderful gathering. And when we began this process, I guess just about 2.5 years ago, we had no idea of how many people would actually appear and be here. But our expectations were reasonably modest, and it's thrilling to have 250 of us gathered for this occasion. The gents have asked me to review the schedule for today so that we don't get too confused. We'll listen to the report of the superintendent, which is going to be done on closed circuit TV, so we'll remain in the dining room there at Kimsey for that. Enormously involved in all of the reunions and kind of gave us special treatment for this one. She mentioned that there are 5 reunion classes here this weekend. 44, 49, 59, 64, and 69. So we are not alone in reunion. Neither are we the oldest reunion, but there are going to be a bunch of us here. And some of you have met them before, but please be aware and thank the Class A's. 3 of the wonderful folks here at West Point drew the short straws, and they got to be our Class A's. But there's Nadine, Jody, and Noel. And thanks very much for your support. We really appreciate it. We got in thinking up of doing that. His granddaughter, Autumn, is here, and Michael Katina, who's Roger Gaines' grandson. So without much further ado, we've asked them to make some brief comments about what's going on in the Corps. And then we thought it would be more interesting to have a Q&A with them rather than asking them to give a lecture. So be thinking about what we want to ask them. But may we turn it over to you?
Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for having us. It's a real pleasure. Just some context about myself. Michael Katina, class of 2019, so I'm here to graduate Saturday, hopefully. Still a few more days to mess that up, but hopefully I can keep on the straight and narrow. For myself, I branch field artillery, and I'm going to Fort Bragg for There's 3 questions for context of that. And,
Hello, I'm Autumn Shea. I'm actually not going to use the mic.
It's not working.
It's fine. So I am not a firstie. I'm a second class cadet, and I was recently promoted because I'm working at Buckner this summer. So we deployed out there yesterday. So that is the reason we are in fatigues and not looking as nice as all of you. I hope to branch aviation, and I'm an international relations major here. I am on the marathon team, so if you have any questions about extracurriculars, I can help you out there. Thank you for having us.
Can you hear me back in the back of the room?
You have to hold it very close.
What do you have to do?
Hold it close to your
Put it in your mouth.
I guess you can hear me now. The first question I have has to do with the choice that cadets have to make at the end of their second year. So I'd just like to have a little explanation of how that works, and also are there any financial consequences to the cadet?
So he is discussing affirmation. So as an incoming second class cadet, we affirmed. So that's where we said, Army, you can have me for 5 years. So we swore ourselves away. There is an option for cadets to not do that. You can decide that West Point is not the place for you and that you don't want to give 5 years of your life away, and you can leave without a financial obligation. And the purpose of this is to make sure that the last 2 years of development are focused on people who want to be here and who have that passion and drive to serve in the Army, rather than bring people in who are half committed and half interested.
Very good, thank you.
My first question is about alcohol. Michael, when we were cadets, we had a rule, a 25-mile rule, no alcohol. Could you give us what the current rules are?
Yes, sir. So the 25-mile rule is not a thing anymore. I'll let you know that. But there are distinctions as far as how strict it can be. So as long as you're 21 and older, you're allowed to drink as a cadet. There are certain stipulations. So if you are a plebe or a yearling and you're 21 or older, you cannot drink unless it's on the weekends. That's due to an evening study period throughout the week that'll bar you from drinking. Establishments that you can drink at as an eligible cadet are here at the the officer club, the first class club, and the cow club, sorry, for cows that are of age. You still can't drink in the barracks. You still cannot drink in the barracks if anyone drinks.
All right, the next question that I have relates to athletic activities at the academy. And I'd like a brief summary of how it works with particularly football players who may want to turn pro. What is the program for them upon graduation?
So recently, the President of the United States decided that anyone at a military academy who wants to play professional will need to serve first. So this isn't how it worked beforehand. We had select athletes that were so good at their craft that got to go pro. That's no longer the case. They think that because they're here, because they chose to go to a military academy, they need to do that military service first. That's how it works.
Are we going to have 25-year-old second lieutenant?
We might. We might.
I asked my serious question first. I don't want to get into the frivolous. Could you explain, give us a briefing, a short briefing on military training as a cadet?
So I'm not exactly well briefed on what you all had to do as cadets back in the day, but for us, so the Beast Barracks is still the same as far as cadets first learning how to be cadets, and then military customs and courtesies. And then as we go on into your yearling summer, that's cadet field training. So all the training out at Buckner that you guys are well familiar with. That's been shortened to 4 weeks instead of all of the summer. Autumn right now actually is going to be working that detail as an executive officer, so she can tell you more about that. But the other things that we have available for cadets include all sorts of actual Army training. So I'm Air Assault qualified. There are other opportunities for airborne school, sapper school, machine gun school. There's all sorts of things. So anything that can be done in the actual Army, most cadets are eligible to do if they apply and if there is some sort of screening process. As well, there's been an addition called Cadet Leader Development Training, which is an abridged version of Ranger School, if you will. So cadets are in the field for 14 days or so. They do patrol bases. They run patrols, run mission ambushes, just to get people prepared for what's likely to happen during Ranger School or out in the field.
This is a question that was given to me by one of our classmates, and it's directed to Autumn. Some 40 years ago, the Corps integrated women into it. At that time, upon graduation, female graduates were then integrated into all-male units. Could you see the day when females, when we'll have full female units?
So I can't see that day because I think it goes a little bit against our mission set and it separates us a little. In the end, we're brothers and sisters in arms, and the purpose of making us into a team and integrating women was because it benefited the mission set. So me and Mike here, as a team, it doesn't matter that I'm a girl and he's a guy, it just matters that we are both prepared and knowledgeable on our skill set. So though I don't see that day, I just don't see that day.
And I might add, that's the answer we wanted to hear. Thank you all.
When I decided to go to college, I chose the Citadel. And I chose it because there were no women. And I knew I would be in serious trouble if there were women while I was trying to get an education. And then I came to the academy, and they put us in vertical divisions, all men. Pretty good, I could focus on what I needed to do to get an education. Now it's horizontal living with boys and girls. How has that worked out for you? And don't tell me that you can't tell the difference.
So, I can only speak from my experience. I think that it has benefited us and me a lot being with the opposite sex and learning that appropriate environment and how to conduct yourself, because what it is, it's a professional environment. So though we do have occasional misconduct in the barracks, it's more about being able to make that team and getting past that and having that same standard that we're working on, so that it doesn't matter that it's a guy and a girl living as neighbors. Because in the end, it's our office and it's our workplace and we're getting our job done. And that is what we pay attention to. And they put us in these lovely outfits, so it tends to not be as distracting.
We have an audience of a couple hundred people, and over the years, I've heard these rumblings coming up from the bottom about how the Corps has actually gone to blazes. And I think it would be appropriate if some of the audience here would start asking, would ask a few questions of things that they have wondered about that are going on the academy these days that were not going on in our days. So, open it up.
I would like to hear. I would like to hear Michael's comment about Duke's question.
Yes, ma'am.
Please.
So what I was about to say about the female integration, I think especially West Point leads from the front in this, as far as setting the standard for the rest of the military. So being able to integrate women into West Point, being able to work alongside of them professionally as well as in a social environment is key, especially now that the actual Army has integrated women, especially in combat roles. So I think this is where you set the stage. This is where you learn the behaviors that are correct, so that when we're in the actual military, that we'll be able to behave appropriately. I think just like any normal institution, having men and women benefits both. Being able to interact socially and learn how to grow that way is extremely beneficial. And I know that I've grown a lot from having female counterparts with me, as well as just normal male cadets.
Stand up.
In our preparation, PTO and my preparation, we regret that we did not allocate more time to
Can't hear you, Steve.
We regret that we did not allocate more time to hearing from our two cadets, but regretfully, we have to move on to other matters in this meeting. But we'd like to give a big hand to both Michael and Thank you very much for being
here. I want to add my welcome to all of you, classmates, friends, families. It's really special, as Pete said, just the idea that it exceeded our expectations on the people that come is a clear demonstration of the unity of the class and the spirit of the class, and we appreciate it so much. For my report, I'm going to touch briefly on 4 points. The first point is to again thank all of the organizers for this. When Pete Dawkins asked me to take up the mantle of our long-term and beloved secretary, Jim Walsh, how could I refuse? Pete's put his heart and soul and dedication into this class and into the Army, and I couldn't say no. It's an honor. But one of my very first big worries was we have our big class reunion coming up. And I've been through the process of trying to find somebody to head reunions. It's always been a problem. I started out asking several people, no success. Everybody had a good excuse, so it said. And then, out of the blue, and we can give thanks for this, Pete Keogh and Steve Rebell stepped up, and they said, we didn't have to beg it. They stepped up and said, we want to do it. We want this to be one of the best reunions ever.
Hear, hear.
And they have been on top of this for more than 2 years now, and you can't believe how much coordination, how many meetings, how many phone calls, all the details that go into it, and it's just, we owe them a lot. And when you see them, tell them how great it is. This is the kind of spirit that's made our class so great, is people stepping up to do the hard things. And that's just warms my heart so much. Now, I also want to mention it again, AOG. Vince McDermott had our initial meetings with us. He's in the AOG and started us on this road to the reunion. And Nicole Vitale has been, you saw at the registration table, she has just been on this day and night. It's been her full-time job for the last few months. And there are so many details, and she's done a wonderful job. And also, Kathy Kilner is here, who heads up the class events, and she's been a great friend of the class and has helped us. Okay, my second point, after those thank yous, is just to talk about our class organization and leadership and the changes in that, and catch you up on that. Now, with the unexpected loss of Jim Walsh, it was a wake-up call. I had no access to his files or to his records. We were confronted by the obvious fact that, yes, we are mortal. We thought for many years that we weren't mortal, but we are mortal. And we had to deal with that fact. So the result was that for each class leadership position, we now have we almost now have a backup designated classmate for each position. This is really the spirit of picking up the flag when the flag bearer goes down, when you're charging it up. And so I want to give you that current structure, and we're always open to your thoughts on this. First, our president, may he live longer than the Queen Elizabeth of England, Peter Dawkins, continues to serve as our president. And our primary backup to Pete is our long-term vice president, Nick Crotcher. Now to back up, you all know Nick. and to back up Nick, to the extent necessary, or if he needs help, we have Mike Gillette. Mike, everybody knows that. I'm the secretary, and we now have a backup secretary standing in the wings, and he's going to be attending the Leaders Conference this summer in my place, so he'll be integrated. That's John Guthrie. Our treasurer, Art Griffin, has done a wonderful job. He stays on top of things. I talk to him all the time. He could not come to the union today, but we want to thank Art Griffin, who's still our treasurer, and our alternate treasurer is Bill Breen. And I want to mention that Bill also has had a key role in guiding this reorganization process. He really pushed that, and we thank you for that, Bill, for that foresight. Our class scribe is Hank Larson. There's Hank. And our alternate class scribe, John McNerney. We have this, our memorials organization, which was originally imagined and brought into being by Sandy Beach, who we thank so much. He's moved into the wings, and Jack Neal has taken over that for the past couple of years, and Jack's done a great job, and I'm sure you've seen many of his emails. We call him the Band of Brothers representative. We appointed an alternate for that position, and very sadly, just a short time ago, Jack O'Brien, who had taken this job on, passed away suddenly, and we're very, very sad about that. And so we now have an open alternates position there that we'll be looking for. Information systems, Bob Roth. Where are you, Bob? Talked to him earlier. Anyway, Bob has been handling our website. He took it over from Charlie Tennant, who had originally organized it, and we appreciate that. And we need a backup for Bob Roth. As I said, we're all mortal, and I'd like to invite you to consider that, or maybe you've got a retired son or daughter that would take that on. I mean, this has happened in other classes. Some of the sons and daughters are actually running things, so think about that. Women of Class, our organization is Susan Breen, and she has been providing information to the women of the class and keeping things organized there. And Ann Russell has stepped up to be her alternate. Ann, are you? She did here? Okay. Well, thank Ann Russell. My third point is effective class communications as we move forward from here. Now, we don't need any reminders that we're aging. We see it in the mirror every day. But as a class, we owe it to ourselves to keep this wonderful group vibrant. And these days, there's really only one way to do that, and that's through electronic communication and keeping up with each other, knowing what's going on. With our geographic dispersion, we have to rely on this. Now, many of us are being dragged, kicking and screaming into the 21st century. I know that. They don't even want to do it, but this is the way we stay together. This is the way we communicate. Now picture this. Every time I send one of those group messages to the class, I will get 25 or 30 bounce backs from people who have not kept up their email address or something like that, and they're just out of communication. We need to eliminate that. Why does that happen? Well, people change their email addresses. Maybe they tell some of their friends, but they don't tell the AOG, they don't tell me, they don't tell Bob Roth. So that's an issue there. We have 4 databases, rosters. That might sound kind of confusing, but on our class website, bob59.org, you find a real handy roster there. Anytime you're looking for a name or an address or a phone number, you just click on that and it pops right up. It's under roster. And then we've got westpoint.org. That handles all of our messages that you receive from the USMA 59, from the official list, from the semi-official list, for those who are on the forum, or on Susan Green's Women of Class list. Those are all maintained by this private organization, westpoint.org, and it's not connected to West Point, it's not connected to the AOG, it is supported by you. I'll remind you of that, and they're having a fundraiser right now. Now the AOG maintains a roster, so when I send out a class message to everyone, or when Jack Neal does, or Susan Green does, it only goes to those who've kept their data updated with the AOG. So we've got really 4 sources. Now I'm not gonna, well, there's one more. Kevin O'Neill has maintained for a long time a master list, which he meticulously keeps on an Excel spreadsheet, and he sends out a copy of that about every 6 months. So I save that on my computer where I can find it. Hank Larson, this is not part of the network, but Hank Larson, in maintaining these class notes, only can update that based on your inputs. And you're reading the class notes. This replaced, as you know, a long time ago, the TAPS, or the West Point magazine that we had. So you'll see pictures, you'll see events, you'll see things going on, and we've got to keep Hank Larson informed. I will put out soon a review message of all of this with the details, again, of how to do it. But please keep those instructions handy. I will help, and we'll try to get everybody together on this. My 4th point, briefly, is future class reunions. And it's more of a open-ended item. From here, this may be our last reunion of this size. Now from here, we may or may not want to have our additional reunions at West Point. Somebody, you might want to have it in some other location. It's up to us, it's our class. Many do have every 5 years here. But in addition to that, I think, and Pete has brought this point up, we really might need to think about these regional reunions. They're really helpful, and people who take it upon themselves to organize something locally, it's very rewarding. I mean, if you get 35, 40 people, classmates plus guests, that's wonderful. And that can be arranged, you know, at a resort hotel. It doesn't have to go on for days. And, you know, it's not that big of a problem for people to do. So please think about having something in your region of the country. The class secretary will support you on that as far as getting out the word and providing information and all that. So it could be very simple. That's all I have. I will, as I said, put out a follow-up message on this communication stuff so that everybody can be up to speed. Again, my pleasure to be here with you today.
Come up here, please, sir.
This is the B Squad Treasurer's Report. Art Griffin is fine. He is tending to Joyce at this time. That's why he can't be with us. It is a necessity of our bylaws that you be presented with a copy of the class fund situation as of the end of the year. It is on your table. A quick glance will tell you that our expenditures, our income is contributions from us. Our expenditures are for funeral support. There will be some comments about that process later in the BOB 59 discussion. Our balance, as you can see, is $123,000 plus, and we are in good shape, and we can make some decisions again that you'll hear about with Band of Brothers and how we might more efficiently support future funerals. One other item to report, not official, but many of us contributed to the Versace Fund recently. This wasn't something run by the class. It's to upgrade the Versace Memorial and Plaza in Arlington, I guess that's where, Alexandria, Virginia. And Kevin Rue, an honorary classmate, I think, ran that process. They collected $142,000 to take care of that, and of which our class contributed almost $20,000. Are there any questions on the Treasurer's Report, as exciting as it is? Thank you for your attention.
I think next we'd like to talk about the Band of Brothers, and Jack, could you come up and inform us?
First of all, maybe
You
the
need
most
to pull the microphone.
the most rewarding thing for me so far today is seeing the two cadets here, and that demonstrates to me clearly that the Corps has not, and I feel very, very good about that. I'm going to give you a brief picture of Band of Brothers, how we got here, where we are, and what we need. You will rehear much of this later at the Cadet Chapel, where I'll be speaking on the same subject to a somewhat larger audience, but basically the purpose is to tell you where we're going and, in a way, to ask you for help. Our brotherhood began July 5th, 1955, not so much by design, but to help us survive the rigors and challenges we encountered during East Barracks and beyond. Following graduation, our linkage to one another increased and evolved as we moved forward, professionally and individually, over the years. Later, what initially had been an informal relationship that began in East Barracks was given some structure. In June of 2002, almost exactly 17 years ago, Jim Walsh created and distributed our formal last farewell policy, emphasizing the definite need for us to, quote, take care of our brothers and their families, end quote. That was in 2002. In 2003, Sandy Beach added some structure to that. formalized it, and it was Sandy who created, in a 2003 document, the phrase, if you will, Band of Brothers 59. That we are. Our brotherhood is no less important now than it was decades ago. By some measure, it is more important now. What was different is that we are in a different place now, with numerous different issues at play which are impacting us individually and collectively, making this more important. We have age, mental and physical challenges, geographic distribution, and all of these factors are playing together for each and every one of us, but with a different mix. I add to that the fact that our partners in this, our wives, are undergoing the same mix of issues. So between the influences of age and so forth on us and on our spouses, the challenge is greater for BOB. Now, and this was mentioned earlier, for some reason, more and more classmates are deliberately, it would appear, off the net for one reason or another, and that is their choice. But by being off the net, it makes it more difficult to muster the support that we need for one another in time of crisis. One classmate, and I doubt that he's here, off the net, calls me faithfully every 2 to 3 months to find out who died. That's sad. I'll posit something else here. We have, in essence, in my estimation, based upon my experience, there are 2 classes of 59. Geography is at issue. On the East Coast, Washington, D.C., and in that area, but up and down the East Coast, and I'll simplify it by saying east of the Mississippi, it's not too hard to get folks to rally for one another in time of need. You go west of the Mississippi, it's an entirely different structure. There are literally hundreds of miles, many counties, between classmates as we go west. So it's a challenge to marshal support needed, particularly on the West Coast. Much of my job now is to try to marshal support in time of need. It's not working out like we had hoped. We're not in communication with one another like I would like to see it, and we're not getting, for example, AOG memorial articles. We try to promote that too. That's sort of a byproduct of my efforts here, but we still don't have a memorial article, for example, for somebody named Jim Walsh. The process was started, but somewhere it died on the vine. Write your own memorial article and instruct your family how to process it, because we're lacking the resources now. In closing, I'd like to say that basically we need you and the Band of Brothers now more than ever. It's a busy time and it's getting busier. Please be ready to stand up when asked. You're going to hear some of these words later at the chapel with a slightly different tone, but basically, Band of Brothers 59, we need your help. Thank you.
Jack, thanks very much. Yes, sir.
I want to comment on something you just said about writing your own memorial. Not only should you do that, but tell your kids that you've done that and where it is.
Thanks very much.
AOG will hold it for you. You can send it to AOG.
I don't know if you heard that or not, but if you choose to go ahead and prepare your own message. ALG will keep it, catalog it, and have it be available. So that's something very much worthwhile.
That's true. We'll put it in your column files. So if you ever need it or family needs it. And just one thing about memorial articles, and I strongly encourage you all, as it was already stated, to prep your own and maybe find your buddy, say, hey, you know, I'm your ranger buddy on this, I got your back and we'll take care of that. I just want to share one short little story. So the gift shop called me one day and said, Kathy, somebody's here and they're looking for information on their loved one, and can you talk to them? So I said, you know, what's their loved one's name? And I looked them up, and there was a memorial article written. So I said, send them up. So I clicked it, hit send on the printer, grabbed it off the printer, didn't even look at it, but I saw someone getting off the elevator. As I'm walking to her, the paper was turned around, and the woman was in tears before she got to me, because I was able to make a connection for her that she didn't have. And so that's just what you want to do, you know, for those your family behind you. So I strongly encourage you, and if you need any assistance, don't hesitate to reach out to Marilee Meyer. She is our memorial article manager. So our goal is that we will, you know, work with the family and classmates to do that. So thank you.
Good, thanks very much. Before I ask Sue to come up and talk about women in class, I want to brag a little bit on the Breeds. Has been mentioned several times. People have kind of taken a step forward and initiated things and looked after things. They're very modest folk, but through the last half dozen years, Bill and Sue have continuously been part of cultivating the spirit of the class, the activities of them, and we owe this couple a very special debt of gratitude for all that you've done on our behalf. Thanks so much. Sue, come on up and you wouldn't talk about women of class.
This is the fun part. Right?
It is.
Thanks, everybody. Can I move this off? Yeah. I'm here to talk about the sisterhood. And the sisterhood started because the brothers weren't telling the sisters what was going on. Right, Pete? It's as simple as that. In the year 2000, Bill and I were on a sabbatical. We sold our house and told the kids we were taking off, and we took off for about 18 months. Toured Europe and the US, and we were in San Diego, I remember, and Pete sends out a volunteer request for someone in the class who would be willing to start corresponding with the women. And we talked about it a little bit, and really the main reason was that messages that were being sent from the men to the men were not being relayed to us. So my dear husband named this group Women of Class. I did not name it Women of Class, but I think it's so cool. So here we are, 19 years later, still corresponding with the women of the class who choose to be part of this list. I will tell you that only about a third of the women are on the list, have been on the list consistently. It consists of widows. Some of you, grads yourselves, are on the list, which I think is also pretty cool. But the purpose was to just talk to each other. I promised no jokes, no football, no weight loss, and no recipes. We're not going to do that kind of information. But during the day when everybody was still on active duty, if you will, or changing jobs, or retiring, grandchildren were being born, this was a very exciting way to communicate. And over the years, because we're all slowing down, the news is slowing down too. So here we are. The knees, the hips, the eyes, the memories, everything is a little bit slower. But we're still hanging in there and trying to get messages out. Jack and I have collaborated a number of times on many, many of the death notices. I'm sorry to tell you that as of Saturday, John Harkins from I2 died. We just learned this yesterday morning. So now we have to start, Jack, with a new stream of messages. If any of you want to be added to this list, men or women, please let me know. See me afterward. A woman, and I don't know if she's in the room, Joan Friedland. Is Joan here? Joan came up to me at the dinner table last night, excuse me, and said that she needed names and addresses of people. And my brain immediately goes to, does she know about the bob59.org website? And I dare say she does not. So we want to make sure that these lists that Bob Wheatley talked about are there for you. Something else that my dear husband came up with, a fun idea. I want to share a few minutes of that with you. I'm cooking dinner one night at our lovely home in California and complaining, why am I still doing this? Why aren't we going out to dinner at night? Why do I still shop at the commissary? And Bill said, well, why don't you ask a bunch of your friends what they're doing? So we came up with this fun survey, which I sent to women of class. And I gotta tell you, we got some wonderful answers. There were only 8 questions on the survey. How many in the room took the survey that are here? Anybody? A few. Thank you for your information. The first question was, are you still cooking meals for you and your spouse or your significant other? And the questions were this: yes, spouse is dealing with some health issues, so he doesn't help. Cooking every day, 3 meals a day, for me and my dear partner and my friend. Someone says, yes, I still cook, not as much as I used to. And I enjoy cooking, not as much as I used to. And is Al Phillips in the room today? Okay, are you ready, Alan? Alan cooks and prepares most daily meals now that he's retired, and I take care of the kitchen for large family events. Thank you, Al. A couple of other funnies. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but there were 8 questions, very simple. I've already emailed this message to women of class, so if anyone wants one, here's a question. How much of your annual expense is spent on dining out or cooking at home? And this I thought interesting. Don't know, never did the math. Can't say, we gave up Mickey D's a long time ago. I have no idea. Less than half, so they're eating half in and half out. Are you the main cook in your family? Someone, no names here. Yes, we have friends whose husbands took up cooking when they retired and became gourmet cooks. That trend never found its way into our home. I shared a story that I still do some consulting in our community, and so there are evenings or luncheons, whatever, when I'm going. And Bill is not the greatest cook, but Bill can feed himself. And he does pretty well, and I mentioned that some of his favorites are MREs, and Spam, and fried rice. So I think this came from Joe Hurst. Is Joe in the room? Joe does most of the cooking, no MREs, and we never have Spam. So, oh, this must be Tom Munns. Tom, are you in the room? Thank you, Tom, but he hates to cook, right? And he doesn't like using the grill either. Okay, one more. No, it's actually more of the same. Monk Hilliard, is Monk in the room? I'm gonna have to ask Monk to make breakfast for us because he makes great pancakes, waffles, eggs, and grits. Here's someone that would burn the kitchen down if she let him in the kitchen. So anyway, the sisterhood is long and strong and hard, and we have lots of stories to tell, and it has been my pleasure over the last 19 years to continue to write to all of you. Thank you.
Before I ask Mike Gillette to come up, I want to give you just a little bit of background. Thanks very much, Sue. Appreciate that. I called Mike a year ago and said I had a really wonderful idea. for him. He hung up. I had to call him back again. True story.
Hey, being classmated.
He reminded me of classmating. But what occurred, it was really very wonderful. Mike agreed to do it. The class of 1958 has done a profoundly elaborate job of keeping track of the governance within their class. They began a number of initiatives early on as graduates, which they continued and really built into quite a tradition. And so I asked Mike if he would take a look at what class of 58 did and undertake to build for us a governance structure going forward. Mike's done a lot of work on this, and I think it's very interesting. So Mike, could you come up and tell us a little bit about what you've been about?
It is a particular pleasure for me to see all of you distinguished, good-looking guys back in uniform again. Congratulations to all of you. None so fine. My title, class officer, is Vice. I'm the backup to Nick Croce. As Vice, my brief is to be very, very brief. If I sin as Vice on this, I will hear from somebody. Everything that you have heard this morning is summarized in a paper which was distributed to the class by Bob Weekly last February. And the only requirement that I have this morning is, can we just, with a show of hands, approve this draft document as the going forward guide for the class of 1959, in the understanding that if we have to change it over time, we will. Show of hands, please. It looks like it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Mr. President, over to you.
God bless you, Mike. That's the briefest of all the reports. Pete Keogh, did you have some things you wanted to mention? Pete's the silent partner of the Steve and Pete Dynamo. But again, let me just brag on this guy a bit. No, you can't have the mic quite yet. It's mentioned before, but honestly, this dynamic duo of Pete and Steve took this to heart and have spent a prodigious amount of time, effort, and attention, love, and regard. And we owe them so much for that. Really, really do appreciate it. It's been a labor of love, I know, and he's now going to tell us some important things, I'm sure.
Pete, thank you very much. When I left the room this morning, you always get from your wife, I always give you a couple of messages. Don't forget this, don't forget that. And I'm counting on my fingers, thing I have to remember. But I'd say the most important thing is that everyone should enjoy themselves here and just have a good time, because that's what it was all about. The second thing is someone who hasn't been mentioned too much previously is my co-partner here, Steve Rubel. Now, Steve has been in the process from the very beginning, and he's diligent, but most importantly, he's a ferocious negotiator. And we had some controversy with the Thayer Hotel, even the AOG. But at one point, Vince, who was representative of the AOG, he told us that, told Steve specifically, he said, you know, you are here as a guest of the superintendent. In other words, that's it. At the Thayer Hotel, one of our vigorous negotiations, they told us, well, there are other hotels, you know. So that was it. So Steve was with us all the way. Did a great job, and no one could have done better. The second item I wanted to mention was the support from the AOG. And the primary contact was Nicole Vitale. And she's the type of woman that you tell her something, that very day it's done, or the very next day. So it was always, "Will go, I'll do it." There was no slow walking with Nicole Vitale. I did want to mention her, and we'll certainly do it in the future. We'll report back to the AOG. Now, at this stage, I'm going to do a little pivot, because I did have prepared remarks, so I'm going to let it go. And it gets back to a dinner I went to, let's see, a number of years ago. It was a Heisman Trophy dinner, and Pete was the speaker. And he told I remember. He told a story about his father, and he used to call his father every day. And they'd have a conversation. And he said after a while, he noticed that his father would just go on to another subject, just cut him like that and go on. And he did that a number of times, so Pete finally figured out that his father, when you get to a certain age, if you don't want to talk about something, you don't talk about it. You just go on to what you want to talk about. So I'm gonna move on to what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the Army athletic program during our era. Now, there were many teams involved, and I did a little research on it. It turned out that our era was the best overall athletic program in the history of Army sports. It's true. I did check that out. Now, I think the best way to approach this is to mention the team, mention what they did, and mention the captain, obviously. So I'd like to start with our football team, our famous football team. Of course, undefeated team. I always felt it was the best team that Army ever produced. When you look at that team, just look at the backfield, we had at least 2 All-Americans in the backfield. And on the line, we had a number of All-American or American players. So it's unusual that combination, especially for Army, that combination would ever come together. Well, it did that year. And of course, the captain was Pete Dawkins. The other surprising team, you don't hear a lot about them, but you should. It's the 150-pound football team. They had a record of 6-0. They were undefeated. The captain here was Dick Welch. Next, we had our soccer team. Our soccer team had a record of 8-1. And the captain here, of course, was Fred Monzo. Cross country, captain was Dave Carroll. They was 3rd in the nation. That's what we're talking about. Basketball was Chuck Darby. They had they sort of in a rebuilding move. They had a winning record of 14-10. Hockey, Larry Palmer, they split the season. And I mentioned that to Larry last night. And we were talking about the goalie. And actually, there were 2 goalies when you're playing. The first was Larry Palmer. And the second goalie was the net behind him. So if a shot came at you and you heard the rubber hit steel, it hit the goal post. So that's also a function of the credit. The credit goes to the one goal. And of course, as I said, the captain was Larry Palmer, and of course the alternate captain was Pete Dawkins. Now we move on to wrestling. Wrestling was one of the Dave Weisenseal, that was considered one of the finest wrestling teams that Army had put forth in a number of years. Squash, my old roommate O.K. Lewis, and they had a record of 10-3. Pistols, Powell Hutton, they were the team champions in the Midwinter Nationals, a sensational team. Rifle, Warren Smith, they were undefeated. Track, Gil Wrestler, they were first in the heptagonals. Baseball with Fred Franks. One of the things they did, they played the San Francisco Giants up here, and they held the Giants to 17 runs. Lacrosse, Steve Herter, this was the #1 team in the nation. And they had 3 All-Americans. Tennis, Russ Shelverton. And then we have golf. I think golf was in a rebuilding year that year. They missed a lot of putts and they just didn't so that tells the story of our teams, and it's something to appreciate and just remember. There was a saying by St. Augustine relating to sport, because before St. Augustine became saintly and became a saint, he did a lot of other things. And among those things, he was actually he was a track coach. And he used to tell his people, all the runners in the stadium compete, but only one wins the prize. Therefore, run to win. Now that's a pretty tough message, but I'd say our people, we all ran to one, we all competed, and that's enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete, very much. Before we close this out, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a gentleman off to my right who's been videotaping all this, Tom Davidson, and we all remember fondly his father, Gar Davidson. I'll tell you one quick story about Tom's dad. When he was Soup, we were, I think, double dating, and it was a Saturday evening, and so Tom had asked me to come over and watch some TV in the Soup's TV room. And I was dressed gray, and he said, well, just take your jacket, the Soup isn't going to be back for a couple of hours. So take your jacket off, and I'll give you one of my dad's Hawaiian shirts. So we're sitting with our feet up, watching the TV, and unexpectedly, the superintendent wandered back in. Striding through the room, he looked over at me, never broke a stride. He said, "Good looking shirt." But in any event, Tom wanted to talk for just a minute or two about some things that are underway with regard to his father.
I felt like a member of the class of '59 for longer than maybe you guys have been members of the class of '59. Part of this started with that gentleman over there, Mike Gillette, when he was 2, met my now wife, Connie Bessel, whose father eventually wound up being the dean, when he walked in and pulled her hair and made her cry. She's never forgotten that.
I was ejected.
80 years later. And there are others here in the class who are part of my soul. I honor who you are. I don't think West Pointers really understand who they are or what they mean to the country. You are the country. You are duty, honor, country, and leadership at a time when we desperately need it in the country. So I thought I'd just tell you just a minute about who Gar Davidson was. His father was a soldier, and when he went away to war, my dad and his younger brother were sent to New York to grow up in the home of his grandmother. Graham taught Gar Davidson to be everything he became: leadership, courage, honor, integrity. And that woman was the one who made Gar Davidson what he was. And talk about women. On the other side, Bill Bessel, who became my father-in-law and the dean of the military academy, was sent off at a young age to 2 maiden aunts. And those women made him who he became. So the dean and the superintendent of this academy raised by women. And I've always thought that's why when soldiers are in their foxholes, they don't call for their dad, they call for mom. And that's who you are. you women. As important as that is the men, you are our defense. You are what have made America what they are in this country. My dad did his little part. He always wanted to be a West Pointer. He grew up in the Bronx. He came to the class of 1927, played football, became the football coach, selected over Red Blake. Wasn't too happy about that. One of the winningest coaches in the history of the military academy. Went to war as Patton's engineer, the invasion of North Africa, the invasion of Sicily, where Patton pinned his own stars on my dad. They didn't have any, so he took his own off and gave them to my dad. Then Patton had his little slapping incident. My dad went on with the 7th Army, and while the Germans were blowing up all the bridges across the Rhine, my dad would have another bridge in the next morning. He liberated Dachau prison camp. He saw the first time bodies stacked. Nobody knew that had happened. He presided over the very first war crimes trial, where 11 German citizens were hanged for murdering downed American airmen. He came back after 4 years away, talk about dedication, thought his war was over, and then Korea went off, and the UN troops were pushed down into the toe of Korea, about to be pushed into the ocean. MacArthur, who Dad knew very well and knew him very well, said, "You gotta come over and build what became the Davidson Line." He then led a breakout that captured 3,000 of the enemy, took the 24th Division to the Yalu River until the Chinese came in. Came back, became your superintendent, and MacArthur had tried to change their curriculum when he was superintendent, and as soon as he left, the academic board said, "The hell with that, we're just gonna keep doing what we're doing." So he later, while he was here as your superintendent, opened the door for the first time to electives. Never happened in the history of the academy. So some of the historians now say that Gar Davidson was one of, if not the greatest superintendent of the history of the military academy. So his war wasn't over. He went to Europe. And this was the time that you all remember that we thought 40,000 Russian tanks might be coming through the Fulda Gap. And so he was on high alert, and he had his army ready. Berlin Wall went up, the Cuban Missile Crisis went off, and he would say later, nobody will ever know how close we came to World War III. So he's just one of you, like you, all of you, and you have the Rocky Versaces and others who've been the history for this country and the leaders of this country, and the country needs you now, men and women. So don't quit, don't stop, keep doing what you've been doing. God bless you for your service, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today. Thank you.
Tom, thank you very, very much. At 10 o'clock to head out. I'm told that we're not to bring our fedoras today. Is that correct?
It was suggested late last night by one of our classmates. Why?
And I hear you say no.
Not necessary to bring your fedora today. Tomorrow we will need them.
So in any event, I think the concern was that we'd probably all lose our hats. If we did them today, we're going to have the picture with our hats tomorrow. So the suggestion of our leaders is to leave the fedoras home today and wear them tomorrow.
Or loan them to a friend.
Or loan them to a friend. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a good day.